So first of all, Jean, thank you for being with us today. I truly appreciate you taking the time. I know it's August, it's holiday time, so I truly appreciate you being here. And what I would like to do before we jump into the actual conversation is to set out the intention for today, because I'm a big believer in the power of intention. I think it gives you the right context and it gives you clarity. And so my intention for our discussion and for the series of interviews that we're actually doing is to be able to connect with people that have a lot of experience, such as yourself, and be able to learn and come up with a couple of new ideas that I can actually go ahead and implement within our agency.
And, oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Awesome. And hopefully people that will be watching this interview will be able to do just that.
Yeah. Excellent.
Super. So, Gianni, you have a ton of experience. I admire you for having such an international and various experience. You've built several businesses. You've coordinated the marketing activities for some leading tech companies such as Jibestream and Enable. Can you tell us what you're currently working on?
Right now, so I still do a lot of work with a couple of companies in North America who are focused on security, tech security. So do quite a bit of work in that space at the moment. And I do a lot of work with a company that is in customer experience management. So how we interact, particularly in a time of the pandemic, through sort of services, whether those in hospitals, education, shopping, retail, banking, basically how those services have changed and evolved, and how we're going to have to adapt to make sure there's still a really good customer experience in a more virtual world. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the work I'm doing is around that at the moment. On a more personal level, I've done very deep over the last few months into launching products online. So doing a lot of work with Jeff Walker and the product launch formula team, and also kind of dived into a lot of Facebook advertising, Facebook Lives, stuff that I see trending at the moment and that seems to be important in a more virtual world. So video, Facebook, all those good things, social.
You seem to have your hands full right now.
I think it's a great time to learn, as well as a good opportunity to sort of pause and reflect and fill in some of the gaps that were there before, whether you're a business or an individual.
Yeah, I think it's a good time to learn and grow. And because you mentioned Facebook and doing virtual events and so on, what we've noticed over the past, I think, 5 months since this pandemic has emerged is that everyone is online, and as a result, every company, or it feels that every company out there, is creating online events, webinars. Everyone is putting content online, and so the space has become super crowded. And I was wondering, how do you go about, cutting through the clutter and being able to reach your audience right now? And how would you advise other marketers to, stay relevant in this very noisy space?
Yeah, I think to some extent that goes back to the business itself, and it's an opportunity for the business and for the marketers in the business to kind of reset, to prune a lot of the offerings or products or services that they have, and to try and kind of find that real core offering, something that they're insanely good at. Tighten up the niche a bit, learn more about the customers that they serve, and really become a leader in that niche. So I think the first step is really, if the business is not doing it already, the sort of marketing team needs to be nudging the business toward that, saying, let's pause for a moment, reset. What are the products, if we line them all up on the table, that are bringing 80% of our revenue? Okay, let's get rid of all the rest of them, and really sort of focus on these products understand all these services and understand who it is we serve, how these products align with them, talk to the customers and understand whether their needs have changed and how those needs are evolving, and then sort of double down on those products. And then I think back to your question about the noise, sure, there's a lot of noise out there at the moment, a lot of content, a lot of seminars, a lot of opportunity to learn, quite frankly, because a lot of those seminars are prices that we've never seen before. You can do something for $100 with a kind of lead in the industry, and you've probably seen all the marketing going around on different channels for that. So for marketers, there's a huge opportunity to learn a lot, but I think cutting through that noise means knowing who your clients are, knowing who your client avatars. There's some marketers who are resistant to creating the avatar. They say, well, creating a buyer persona or an avatar and putting somebody in a box. But developing that really deep understanding of who your client is helps you to understand what it is that they need, what it is they want, and also understand the typical objections they're going to have right now and in the future, and then sort of swing those objections into value around your product. So what are the things they would object to, and how do I create value around those? And then I suppose going to the specifics of creating content in a noisy environment, I think if you understand a lot of those things, you can create much better content that is more targeted, whether you're talking about Facebook Lives, webinars, all of those sort of things. You can create stuff that's really helpful for those customers. And then I think that the next trick is to find the traffic. So there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot going on. So where do you find the traffic? And doing some real research on where it is that your avatar is hanging out, where they're spending their time, so that whether it's putting paid media in front of them or using other mechanisms, you're getting in front of the traffic so that you can pull it in. So I guess to summarize that, it's really understand what products and services the business has that are relevant right now and what you can double down on there. Get to understand your customer insanely well and develop those avatars and build them out. Find out where the traffic is, where they're hanging out, and then put helpful, relevant content in front of them and bring them into your journey, into your customer value journey toward buying.
Yeah,
I hope that answers you.
Yeah, it definitely answers my question. And I love that you said you need to be focused on who your customer is and what objections they currently have, because I think the temptation a lot of times as a marketer is boasting about your own product, and my product does that, or my service does that. And we sometimes tend to forget that it is about the end customer, what he or she needs, and what they find valuable, and just, bringing that into light. So,
bringing that value. Yeah. I agree.
And you've also mentioned some channels. It might be quite specific, but there's an entire discussion right now about LinkedIn being the new Facebook, in the sense that it is less crowded and that you get a lot of visibility without that much effort. How do you feel about LinkedIn specifically? Have you been using it with your clients? Have you seen more traction, more ROI coming from LinkedIn?
So we've been running some campaigns. We've been running campaigns in different parts of the world, the US, Latin America, United Kingdom. We've invested heavily in LinkedIn in the United Kingdom, and target market there's been healthcare and retail. I can't say that we've seen the results we'd like to see through LinkedIn. In fact, our cost per lead is around £9,000, £10,000, possibly even a bit more than that at the moment. So I think I'm seeing a few things. One is paid media seems to be a bit cheaper than it used to be at the moment. We seem to sort of be seeing that, and I know I've gone from a 9,000 per lead example to saying that paid media is slightly cheaper, but I think there are more opportunities on Facebook, LinkedIn, and it used to just be kind of Google search, and then there's been this search in Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, kind of getting in front of the customer.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say probably the most important thing is testing. When we create a campaign, we basically will test if we're running on, so right now we're creating one, I'm just going to use an example. We're running it on both LinkedIn and Facebook. Mm-hmm. And we're kind of setting it up as close as we can on both those platforms. And this one is targeted healthcare. So on LinkedIn, we have a similar sort of ad to what we're running on Facebook. And we have broken it down by job title. And we'll run those tests, and over sort of 4 days or whatever, as the algorithm starts to figure things out, we'll start switching on and switching off ads, and we'll try and get a feel for which platform is working the best. So it's just one example, but I think the key there is testing. We've seen Facebook is really, really cheap for running tests and trying things out. LinkedIn is a bit more expensive. Recently, I was talking to somebody on LinkedIn, and they were saying, in fact, video ads aren't working as well as text ads. I think there's going to be all sorts of gurus out there who are telling us things. I think that fundamentally what it comes down to doing is testing the stuff yourself. Every business is different. Those target markets are different. So you need to understand, going back to the avatar, who your avatar is, and then sort of making a best educated guess as where they're hanging out and test that, regardless of the platform. But I do think paid traffic over just putting things out on social at the moment is probably the best strategy. So there are a lot of companies that invest a huge amount in just putting stuff out on LinkedIn and republishing it. And there's a cost associated with the people who are doing that versus understanding who the avatar is, creating really good, compelling adverts, sort of provocative ads that interrupt the flow as they're scrolling through things. And they go, oh, yes, I'm got that problem. I'd love to know a bit more about it, and kind of pick up your lead magnet. So I think testing is the key. I think the different platforms are going to work for different environments or different sectors.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely. I guess it would be a mistake to say that, LinkedIn is the solution for everyone, or Facebook. You just, as you mentioned, need to know who your persona is, who is your ideal customer, and just follow them wherever they are, wherever they spend their time, which will definitely vary from business to business. Yeah, I think that's...
And I'm seeing so many different approaches. Some are sort of saying, bring your really niche down your target audience. Others are saying, just kind of open it up. I think you've got to test yourself. There's a lot of really good knowledge and expertise out there, and I think you've got to kind of read and absorb that, understand it, speak to the experts, but then your business best and test things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So definitely agree that testing is the way to go.
Yeah.
And speaking in terms of tactics or things that are working, what would you say that this pandemic has changed for marketers, or what changes did you see happening in things that used to work with your clients or within their fields and don't seem to be working that well anymore?
Okay, I just want to go back to one thought on what we were talking about with regards to testing. I do think another mistake that's made is, if an ad doesn't work or a landing page doesn't work, I'll typically see an agency try and change everything. Mm-hmm. You need to have the approach to change one thing at a time. And when I say one thing, it's like change the title, not the title in the image, just the title. And I think there's a lot of pressure maybe on agencies from businesses who are saying, the ad's not working, switch it off or whatever, or change the whole landing page, change everything. You need to be very methodical about the testing process, one change at a time. Otherwise, you don't know what's worked or hasn't. So sorry.
Yeah, that's a very good insight. I think, it's very enticing to change everything, but then as you mentioned, you wouldn't know what worked and what was the change that actually brought some better results. So that's a very good point you made there. Fantastic.
What's changed forever since in digital marketing after the pandemic? I think it's like really a really good question. Depending on the size of the business, one thing I have noticed, and this is not necessarily a good thing, but I've noticed it, is that business owners themselves have started to get far more involved in understanding the marketing process.
Mm-hmm.
So they've gone a little bit down into the weeds, and in the long term, that's not good for the owner, particularly where I come from, helping businesses to be able to kind of put their business on an autopilot, get an engine in place so that the owner can go off and either take time off, or if they get hit by COVID, they know that the business will run without them, or when it comes time to selling, that they are able to sell a valuable business. So I'm seeing a lot of business owners getting into the weeds at the moment. But what has happened is, I believe that for the first time, business owners, at least in the small, medium-sized business, are starting to understand digital marketing better, are starting to question things more. In that process, I think we're sifting out a lot of the sort of noise that's going on out there as well. They're becoming more critical of what they read. So in the past, there was a lot of sort of random acts of marketing, and very often driven by a business owner. My competitor's doing that, quickly produce that, or I saw this press release, we need to put something out. And I think they're starting to understand things a little bit better. So I think that's a really good thing in one way.
Mm-hmm.
The online, we talked a lot about stuff moving online. So we're seeing a huge amount more video, Facebook Lives, YouTube Lives. Your business almost now needs to be shifting onto that, and to be doing, having a strategy, let me put it that way, for video and online events, because we're really moving into this virtual world. Webinars are huge. I think what's coming, what's going to change, is particularly for the US, and I suppose to some extent Europe. There were massive events in the past. Those events have stopped for now, but a lot of the people who put those events on have talked about digital first events in the future. So, when things change, well, we may have a physical event, but we'll always have digital. And I guess in the past, at the physical event, there were opportunities for customers to have stands and stalls and all those kind of things at those events. And the whole campaign that we ran before and after those events kind of get up to bringing people to your stand and interacting with them. I think something's got to shift there, and I think we've got to start thinking about what the future looks like for these online events. And I remember years and years ago, almost at the turn of the century, so telling you how old I am, there was this kind of thinking about having conferences online and online events. And I think we've really got to that point now where this is going to become important. So how, as marketers, do we sort of make online events, webinars, and how do we get the most out of these, and how do we generate leads out of these events? I think that's really important. I think there are a lot of general agencies out there, which there's probably going to be a lot more competition now. I think in some places, businesses cut their budgets and put things on hold and whatever. So the agencies that are good, perform well, have a real sort of niche or good offer, I think are going to survive and thrive. I'm not sure about those ones that are just sort of bumbling along. I think specialist skills are going to become more important as we live in a more virtual world. I see this in other areas where you've got Jeff Walker doing just product launches, how to launch and take a product online. Frank Kern just focusing on sort of Facebook ads and ads at the moment, and how to drive traffic with ads. And the list kind of goes on. I think there's going to be a lot more specialist skills as we wade into this more digital, virtual world.
I definitely agree. We as agencies need to find where is our strength, and just focused on that area, because you cannot do SEO and paid ads and inbound and the whole end-to-end circle. You kind of need to find, what's your strong point, and then perhaps work with people who are, best of those areas. And it's something that we're learning at Stoica as well.
I mean, it's always something I've enjoyed about working with you folks, particularly as a marketing director, and one of the sides that your agency does have is a very broad skill base, mm-hmm. but you have access to specialists, and that may be something. I'm just kind of thinking of this and having this conversation with you as we're talking. Like in the medical profession, you go and see your GP when there's something wrong, and then they send you to a specialist. I don't know, maybe some kind of room for that kind of scenario at the moment, where you have an agency that is quickly able to diagnose the problem mm-hmm. and bring in a specialist. So I think there's an opportunity for collaboration. I think there's possibly an opportunity for businesses wanting to deal with a single agency, where they know that agency has access to really specialist skills that can be brought in when they need them. That might be something for the future. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But it's something I feel like I've always had with your team, where we'll find somebody who can do really good video for you, or find somebody who can do SEO in our kind of black book. So it's been nice. You don't have to go. You're the sort of go-to folks for. I have that challenge. I know you or Andre, whoever's probably got somebody in their little black book that is specialist, and you haven't said, "Oh no, we'll just do it." It's always I've got somebody who knows what they're doing, and they'll help you, and I've appreciated that. So
good to hear that. I'll let the rest of the team know. They will be watching the interview, and they will find out themselves. So that's good. Jean, I wanted to go a little bit back, because you mentioned at some point that it's important, as we put more and more content online, and as video becomes more common, and people are expecting companies to produce video, that you need to have a strategy in place. And I was wondering if we can maybe talk a little bit about how to actually set up a digital strategy. I know this is a big topic, but just, considering if you are a small to medium company, you have a marketing person or a couple of marketing people, and you've been doing just ad hoc campaigns. As you said, you see that your competitor is doing something, you want to replicate that, but how do you go from that to actually having a coherent digital strategy? What would be the first step? How do you get started with building a digital strategy?
So yeah, it's a big question. I mean, for me, I would, if I was starting off from the beginning, putting that digital strategy together, the first thing I'd do is be building out those avatars, I guess, really understanding who the customer is, understanding the niche, working with the sales team, the marketing team, the product team, if it's in a sort of software development company or product related company, and understanding what the addressable market is, where they hang out, putting those avatars together, and really getting a very clear picture of who we wanted to get in front of. I'd do some research on what our competition are doing. So if we were talking about doing adverts, if I was looking at Facebook, I'd probably go to Facebook ad library, see if they were running Facebook ads, get a sense of where they are or aren't, which would give me, if they have been for a long time, that probably means that platform's working well for them. So try and get a sense of what the competition is doing. And then I'd start, I guess, with the customer value journey and think about what our core offer is and work backwards from that. So what's the core offer? Sales team, what do you notice that's really excited or lit their customers' eyes up just before they buy? So we kind of understand that. And just kind of work backwards. What do we have to offer in terms of either webinars or trials or those kind of things? So can they sign up for a free trial? Do we run webinars? Then down to the more basic lead magnets, then back towards blogs and all that kind of stuff. So just kind of look at that journey, see what we've got, see what we need to create. And then build out a strategy that says, okay, we know where these folks hang out. We know that there's some traffic here. We understand that these are the challenges that they're facing at the moment. These are the objections that they're probably going to have to possibly buying our services or products. And then start crafting content. I mean, I could simply, as far as content goes, just look for the top 10 questions that they're asking. I go to the sales team and say to the sales team, what are top 10 questions that are coming through to you folks? Or use tools like Ask the Public and any number of these tools out there for trying to figure out what the top questions are. Pull those together, create the content, use ideas like pillar posts and core ideas and build content around those. Use a mixture of video and written content because people consume things in different ways. I think I'd also look at the business. You make a good point. If you haven't got the resources in that, and probably if you're a really small business, think about what's easiest for you. Do you take hours and hours to write a blog post, or is it much quicker for you to just run a video off? Some people are more comfortable in front of a camera, so maybe just video post with a short intro, and then where do we put it, and do we use paid to drive the traffic to a landing page with something that kind of builds on top of what that blog article was to convert? Fundamentally, probably the most important thing right now is building your list, from a digital strategy. Just kind of building the list. And then I'd want to make sure we're interacting with the list as frequently as possible, at least once a week. So as we're adding people to that list, make sure we're interacting with them. And what happens very often is we kind of attract folks, we get them onto a list, and straight away the salespeople on the phone and we possibly scare them off. I think you kind of want to get them onto the list, and you want to welcome them to your world. You want to warm them up. You want to create a bit of trust. So there's maybe an initial sequence of 4 or 5 emails that just kind of gets them warmed up to you and helps them to get to know you. Then move them into the weekly communication, and then start pushing offers in to bring them into your customer journey. So that's a whole lot in, like, I don't know.
There's a lot to
help you. It's trying to cover a whole lot. I think list building and your list is probably your biggest asset at the moment as a business, and really looking after that list and not treating it as a list, treating those as your sort of 1,000 core followers or as your, and I don't want to use the word prospects either, but people have really got an interest in you helping and just look after that list. Be insanely helpful. And it's hard work. I mean, and that's why these random acts of marketing are so dangerous. Just doing that because you don't see results almost immediately, you're tempted to go off and just try this or try that and then take the shotgun approach.
Yeah.
But in the long term, steadily building that list up and building trust and rapport with that list is critical.
And knowing that each person on that list will be at different stages in their journey. Some might become aware that they have a problem that you might solve. Some might be in the phase where they're comparing different vendors. So just treating them as, they have different needs, and being able to kind of, understand what their needs are and send relevant and targeted communication their way. I think that's also helpful.
Excellent. I agree with you. Yeah.
And I love the fact that you mentioned that you should think about your company's resources, because you can come up with the perfect strategy. But if you don't have the resources to actually execute that strategy and put it into the real world, you're stuck up with something that's perfect, but you're not able to execute it. And I think this is something that we're seeing with clients, that we want to produce a lot of content. We want to write so many blog articles and do webinars, but those things just take so much effort, and you kind of need to decide, okay, I'm going to focus on that because this is what I can actually build at the moment, and I'm going to take, small steps from there. So I think it's super important to
I agree.
be realistic in that approach.
And, you talked about a strategy, and I think that's probably one of my favorite sort of quotes or whatever is that Sun Tzu, tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. And I think, when you talked about a digital strategy, that's really critical, is actually having the strategy. which is probably one of the most important things.
Absolutely. And I love the code. This is so good. What I also wanted to ask, Jean, was you've mentioned involving the sales team as well. And this is a very interesting angle for me. I've actually worked in sales with
Yes.
technology companies before joining Stoica. And what I've noticed with both companies, one being a multinational company, the other one being a startup, in both companies, marketing and sales were two very distinct departments that did not speak to each other. And it was not because we had a problem with each other. The context wasn't there. We didn't thought we had to sit down at the table and have a conversation. And I was wondering, how would you how would you advise marketers to get on the same boat with their sales colleagues, and how would you go about actually aligning those two departments so that in the end, the marketing activities that we implement do drive business results, not just visits, not just, I don't know, Facebook engagements, but how do we make sure as marketers that what we do actually translates into revenue and into business goals?
Yeah, I think you hit on a good point there when you talk about revenue and business goals. One of the things we've got to understand is that as marketers is that there's a lot of pressure on the sales teams, particularly right now, to close deals, and they need leads, and they're looking to marketing for those leads. Unfortunately, at the moment, a lot of customers have put budgets on hold, and a lot of companies are just sort of, let's see what happens and tighten up the hatches, and where they should really be doing a lot more marketing right now and trying to build a business. So what worked in the past may be slightly different now. And I think the first thing is, you kind of alluded to a little bit, there's this cultural issue. And a lot of that can come from the top, where you have very siloed organizations, and I'm sure you've kind of worked in those, I've worked in those, and then there's organizations that are far more integrated and they're open to sharing ideas. I think in the siloed organization, from a marketing standpoint, if you can find one of the salespeople who is kind of more open and more willing to work with the marketing team, you can start kind of working hand in hand with that person and slowly pry open or bridge the divide between those teams. So that might mean kind of coming up with a campaign together and working on that campaign together and showing the results, but you're working very closely between marketing and sales. So, in that time, you might come in and sit down with the sales team and through one of the typical meetings, and one of the salespeople says, yeah, it's kind of a good idea. Approach them afterwards. Should we try and get this thing turn this into a campaign and make it work? Yeah, great. You're going to support me, work together? Yep, let's do it. And you sort of build that rapport and take the first step in making the connection. I think the challenge that we've got at the moment is almost going back to what I said earlier, where companies need to prune the tree a little bit. They've got a lot of products, they've got a lot of stuff out there. If marketing can help achieve that and just kind of cut back to what these core products are, it's going to be easier to focus resources on that, given that we've got resources even more limited than they were in the past. So it's going to be easier to sort of use those resources rather than being a mile wide and an inch thick, trying to market all sorts of products to all sorts of people. So I think the first step is at a higher level is trying to get the organization to understand that it's time to sort of reset, reinvent, and prune the tree a bit. Then take the lead with the sales team and identify a campaign that marketing and sales can work on together, that can help to bridge that gap, share the ideas, test the campaign together, and show some results as a marketing and sales team. And then I believe that once that becomes visible within sort of broader sales team, there are going to be more people coming and saying, or more sales folks are saying, hey, can we do something similar together and make it work? So I think that would be some the advice there is the marketing folks need to take the lead, because our strategy right now, I think to a large extent, given the climate we're in, is to sow seeds, which is a long-term strategy, and to build opportunities for the long term, which is good, and we need to be doing that. And you can see that's what a lot of companies are doing, where they're putting more and more content out, good content, they're cutting costs on the content. So the marketing teams are really trying to win over a following, but those aren't going to convert to big sales at the moment. There may be, again, talking about the sales and the marketing folks, and this is a bigger business initiative, is to look at some of the products you could take and package up into a subscription. So if you're in a larger accounting firm, as example, you may have sort of bookkeeping stuff that's done regularly. You may have, producing reports, doing invoicing, some admin tasks, grouping that together and creating a package that the sales team then has something new to sell the marketing supports, and is a subscription model. Maybe. So I think there's a lot of, let's get everybody together, let's brainstorm some ideas, and then work together on generating leads and selling those products.
So it's essentially, yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that I guess it's about, as you said, marketers taking the lead and, finding I don't like the expression, but it works, the low-hanging fruit. So those sort of leads that are most likely to convert, and run a campaign on that, show results, and, just prove that working more integrated and communicating more openly will drive results, and will drive results for everyone at the end of the day.
Agreed. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I suppose the only danger with the low-hanging fruits is the opportunistic sort of danger, where trying to think of a good example at the moment. So as we switch to a virtual world, you might come up with an idea for a virtual service, and then the sales team says, well, let's create a new website for that, and let's kind of put that slightly outside, and you start drifting away from the core of the business. Or it's not quite a random act of marketing, but if you think about your business has, like your home has a street address, and everybody knows where your home is. If you put up another website for that product, you kind of got to get that address out there and that brand. And so I think don't overcomplicate the low-hanging fruits. Make sure that they are aligned with your core offering and sort of goal right now. So don't go and try and build a whole new product to a new audience at the moment. Focus on low-hanging fruits that are closely related to your core.
Absolutely.
Maybe to clarify it a bit.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's a very good clarification. So don't spin off.
Spin off all sorts of new stuff at the moment. And there may be a real strategic reason for it, but make sure it's a strategic, not a tactical reason.
Absolutely. Yeah. Jean, this has been a very insightful conversation for me. I'm definitely going to replay this and write down some ideas. So it's super, super helpful. I think for today, we've kind of had quite a long conversation. If you feel that there's something else that you would like to add, before we wrap this up, I think that's a good time to do it.
No, it's been an awesome opportunity. Forced me to think a little bit as we've gone through things as well. So yeah, really enjoyed it. Enjoyed chatting to you. I haven't spoken to you for so long, and it's great to see you well and have that conversation with you. And as I said earlier, that I really have always enjoyed working with your team. I think you've all done a phenomenal job pulling everything together. I love your culture and the values that Stoica has, and great business. I love working with you folks. So
thank you so much.
It's been really good. Thanks very much.